Okay, guys, I'm gonna come back and just talk about this a little bit more. So the reason why I chose to say that this right here was my answer is because I'm looking for the values that are less than zero, um, which means that I'm gonna want something that's negative. So basically, what doing here is that I'm looking at my sign chart and I'm looking to see what gives me a negative value. And that right, or a negative result, and that right there would be this right here and then this right here. And the reason why I chose these is because these are gonna make this statement true, right, which means give me negative values. And so the negative values will be from here and then here. So because when I did the sign chart, that gave me a negative, and then this also gave me a negative. So I want anything that's less than -3, so that means negative infinity to -3, and I want anything that's between negative a half and 1, negative a half and 1. And the reason, once again, why I chose parentheses is because obviously that's a negative infinity right there. These two right here are undefined values, meaning they're asymptotes, so I need to use parentheses there as well. And the reason why I chose an parentheses here on the -3 is because this right here is a less than, meaning that I need to use parentheses like I wrote right here. Now let's say if the problem was a different one, right? Let's say that the problem that we had was this one, x plus 3 over 2x plus 1 times x minus 1. But instead of being less than, let's go ahead and say that this one's greater than. Okay, so if it were greater than, literally the work is still going to be the exact same from what we did up here. So my zeros are still the same, my undefined values are still the same, the sign chart that I did right here, this one right here, this sign chart is still going to be the same. Like, none of this work is going to change. um and the only thing that I'll say that is going to change is my final answer right here, because now I'm not looking for values that are less than 0 or that are going to be negative. Now I'm going to want values that are greater than 0, right? And if I want values that are greater than 0, that means that in this problem I'm going to be looking for positives, positive values or positive results or positive answers, right? And so what will give me that positive value is going to be something that goes between here, okay, and here. And how do I know that? Because these right here give me a positive result at the end of the day, which is what I want. So if I wanted something that was positive, I would say, okay, I'm going to want something that's um, between -3 and negative a half, because that gives me positive. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to want between -3 and negative a half. And once again, it's still the same. I would go ahead and I'm going to put parentheses here because this is not an equal to inequality. And then once again, I will put a parentheses on the 1/2, on the negative a half, because it is undefined. Okay, so now I go ahead and put a union because I need to continue over here. So now I'm going to go ahead and say I want values that are 1 all the way up to infinity, because it's going to go from 1 to this arrow, which means from 1 to infinity. And once again, I put a parentheses on that 1 because it's undefined, and I put an parentheses on the infinity, well, because it's infinity, right? If I wanted to, maybe let's say, change something to where it would have a bracket, it would be something like this. Let's change colors. Okay, let's say we have x plus 3 over 2x plus 1, x minus 1, and let's say we want this to be um, greater than or equal to 0. That means that anywhere where I have a 0, I'm going to go ahead and put a parentheses. Where was my 0? My 0 was here at the 0, at the -3, right? Zeros, -3. So I would go ahead and say, okay, wherever I have a -3, I will now make it a bracket. So I would say -3 to -1/2 union 1 to infinity. The negative half and the 1 will still continue to be parentheses because they're undefined. They're asymptotes, so they have to be parentheses because they're not included. Now, let's say, what would have I gotten if it was x plus 3 over 2x plus 1 times x minus 1 less than or equal to 0? It would have been the same thing. Wherever I had that 3, I would have put a bracket. So that means that that would have been right here. So it would have been negative infinity to negative 3 bracket union negative a half to 1 parentheses. And those will still have parentheses because, once again, they're undefined. They're asymptotes, whereas the negative 3 is a 0. And because now I have an equal to inequality, I can go ahead and put a bracket on that 0. Okay, so I just wanted to go ahead and take some time to talk about that because I noticed that I didn't clarify it, or I didn't talk about an example where you had greater than values, and I did give you some of those for homework. But yeah, that's that. Have a good one.